Welcome to the latest episode of KapVista Klips. Today we are here with Andrew from KiResources. How are you?
Good, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Tell me, I'm excited to get into this episode. I want to find out about what you're doing, but firstly, I want to find out about you. Tell us who you are. Give us your story, your background, how you got to this point.
Yeah, look, definitely. Look, I'm a geological engineer by profession. Been working in the geo-environmental space now for close to 30 years, working across different projects through all sectors, including mining and others over the years. Had an opportunity to get involved in this particular project about 10 years ago, which really started with a field trip out there to do a bit of reconnaissance, see what other exploration companies were doing, but also to meet with some of the small mining operators that were active. And for me and I think the team, was a bit of a light bulb moment to see that we had this hugely unexplored region of far northwest New South Wales that had very little historical investment as far as exploration, and it was just that little that distance away from other actively pursued mining regions in New South Wales around the central and west. But the potential just looked very significant. And when we saw what the existing operators were doing in terms of how simple, how low cost their operations were, what they were producing and discovering, we got very excited. And thankfully we were able to get our initial exploration lease footprint of about 138 square kilometres, and then a few years later able to expand that to what we have today, which is 225 square kilometres. But importantly, we are nestled midway, really, and boundary to boundary of where the existing mining operations are. In some ways, we border them and surround them. Some of their deposits, we believe, extend into our EL, which only just increases the potential, further in the future. I guess what we discovered very early on is exploration isn't cheap.
Yep.
And you need to make sure that you get the best return for your investors for every dollar you spend. So, it became necessary to really, I guess, prioritize and focus our available capital on what was going to generate, the best short-term, long-term returns. And I guess we can talk more about that as we go.
Yeah. So let's get into the project. Where is it? What's the opportunity? What's the upside for investors who are looking at this? What's the top line numbers?
Yeah, look, in terms of the project, we're a few hours north by road from Broken Hill. We've got extremely good access, by road, all sealed now. It wasn't sealed when we started this project. It was, much more challenging to travel there and back. So in terms of access and support services, it's well placed in that regard. And I guess what's exciting about it is we have a mixture of deposits. We have shallow alluvial. We believe there's deeper alluvial because old timers were mining those in different places, and there is substantial hard rock, deeper hard rock potential. There is a bit of work happening in that space now with various ASX listed companies surrounding us. We haven't ventured into exploring the hard rock yet. That's really a longer term thing when we can attract larger capital to do that to the standard that we believe it needs to be done, and will likely yield the best results. But most importantly, the shallow alluvial does present a very low cost, low approval, requirement opportunity compared to these larger, deeper mines because of just really the simple nature of what we're proposing. And so far we've done quite a bit of exploration, which covered geophysics initially to map out this system of paleo channels that exists in various parts of the EL. We've mapped paleo channel systems that extend more than 4 or 5 kilometres in strike length. We've done significant amount of bulk sampling. In fact, our bulk sampling program is the largest one ever been approved in New South Wales. The mining regulator's been really happy with the way that's been performed and I guess the data collected. And what's significant about bulk sampling when it comes to alluvial is it negates this nugget effect that can happen when you're just doing standard traditional drilling programs where you're collecting very small volumes of sample from each borehole over each depth interval. So we were collecting many cubic meters, in some cases 20, 25 cubic meters per sample, which is equivalent to hundreds of borehole samples per sample. But what it allows you to do is really average out grades across those samples. So you're not just doing exploration, but you're actually doing trial mining and feasibility assessment at the same time.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of value in your exploration dollar in terms of what the investment you put into that. And we were able to then validate the geophysics to show that those paleochannels, yes, they were gold bearing. They're gold bearing over substantial distances. The amount of free recoverable gold, and this is by simple gravity methods. So we're not even looking at total gold content. We're looking at what's physically recoverable using simple available methodologies that can be expanded and mined at low cost, and able to establish that we do have continuous gold mineralization across fairly substantial areas, multiple deposits. Our flagship deposit's what we call Mt Poole, based on its location, and we have continuous gold covering some 200 hectares. But to proceed with an application to mine such a large area, it's a substantially larger application process in terms of cost and time. Our strategy is very much to go for small scale applications to begin with, roughly 4 hectares per location. Mm-hmm. It's a lower cost process in terms of all the studies and all the expert studies and the statement of environmental effects and everything that has to be prepared to support that. They're substantially simpler documents, lower cost to produce, but also the approval process. Having had meetings with New South Wales Planning and the mining regulator to really map out the process for our particular region. We're in the unincorporated region of New South Wales, meaning we don't have local government, so the process for small scale applications is a little bit different. But the time frame associated with what we're talking about is substantially smaller, and also, I guess, the capital requirements. But in terms of those initial 4 hectare areas, and we've defined 3 of those, so 12 hectares in total, our exploration geologist has done the modelling on all the data that's been collected using all the standard resource modelling software and techniques. And the resource estimate for that 12 hectares is just over 14,000 ounces, or roughly 1,100 and something ounces per hectare. But that entire deposit has 200 plus hectares of potential based on the work we've undertaken.
Yep.
And where we know gold exists. So, once we get started and we can generate cash flow from our initial mining operations, that'll then fund all the infill exploration testing work to then facilitate a much larger mining lease application over the top of that entire area. And really it is our goal to build and develop a deposit of 100,000 plus ounces, recoverable gold. That's our immediate strategy, and then expand from there. And that is really just focusing on that first flagship deposit. And then we've got multiple other deposits across the EL that we plan to progress in parallel as well.
Perfect. Now that 14,000 ounce, the modelling, what's that worth in a dollar figure?
Look at today's gold price, 5,800 Aussie dollars thereabouts, down from close to 8,000 a number of months ago. 80-something million dollars in the ground, obviously, before extraction costs and the like. But, at the grades we have and what we believe our, operating costs are likely to be. And we've based those on not just our own feasibility modelling, but a comparison to what our neighbours have been achieving, and we've been privy to some very useful operational data in terms of production rates and recoveries and profitability. So that's allowed us to benchmark what we are aiming to achieve compared to what's been physically achieved on a similar deposit next door to us, and but expanding that out to 100,000 ounces plus in the future is some serious value, and that's what we plan to achieve for our investors.
So that 80 odd million, is that just from the 12 hectares that you've been able to get samples from?
Just from the 12 hectares.
Yeah, and then you've got over 200 hectares in total
for that one Mt Poole deposit.
Yeah.
Then we have another deposit we're developing, which we call Moffat Scully in the kind of the northern part of our EL. We have another one which we call Good Friday, which adjoins an existing mine that's being developed by a Chinese company. They believe they have some, I think it's roughly 50,000 ounces or thereabouts in their mining lease, which is actually a fairly small area. It's about 1 square kilometre. Our neighbours to the south have tens of thousands of ounces that they're working through and expanding their operations at the moment to increase production rates. So the region still has significant potential.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. So you're looking at potentially quite a sizable deposit in your different leases, and based on just your initial exploration, the numbers are looking very, very good.
They're looking very positive, and that's really just the immediate shallow alluvial. And we're talking near surface down to sometimes 2 or 3 meters in some locations. In one location, 6+.
Yeah.
And continuous mineralization all through that profile, but essentially little or no overburden material to deal with, shallow strip mining, very simple processes and extraction methodologies required. And then we have, the deeper systems to explore, but particularly the hard rock. And there's a lot of very interesting mineralized reef systems running through the area. It's not uncommon for people doing surface gold detecting work to get signals from a lot of that reef material. So we're in the process of commencing some exploration to look at what sort of grades some of those reefs might be containing. But more significantly, we have a very, very extensive, fault zone to the south of our EL. We share that fault with the mining. There's 4 active mining leases south of us at a location called Mount Brown, and they have been producing gold for many years. And to date, they've only been looking and extracting the shallow alluvial, similar to what we're proposing to do at Mt Poole. And that's a 10-kilometre strike length fault system that has produced a significant amount of alluvial gold, some extremely coarse gold. We've personally seen and held nuggets of 8+, I think even maybe close to 20 ounces coming out of that location. So there is still some really, really significant deeper gold mineralization that is yet to be explored. And to my knowledge, there's really been no physical hard rock exploration undertaken anywhere along that 10-kilometre zone for gold in particular.
Okay. And then how much are you looking to raise, and then what's the plan?
Look, our initial raise, our Series A, is 1.5 million, and that is to focus on accelerating and completing these mining lease applications for the Mt Poole deposit, in addition to planning out subsequent exploration work that we can continue with while those mining lease applications are being submitted and assessed by the mining regulator and planning. And then once approved, we would then launch into a Series B, which would be to fund all the mine startup capital that's required. And that would be once we were at or near approval for those applications.
Yeah. So you're raising a small amount to continue on, and then post Series B, do you believe that you will have revenue coming in to help with the additional costs for exploring and getting the gold out of the ground?
We expect to be cash flow positive after Series B. Okay. So once we got those mining leases approved, we raised the capital to get that mining operation underway. That operation is expected to be significantly cash flow positive, and that cash flow is going to be able to generate and fund significant amount of additional exploration, expansion of the operations in terms of mining at Mt Poole, and progressing exploration around the other deposits, and whichever we then believe are feasible to take to mining lease beyond that.
Okay. And then is there a plan to list on a stock exchange?
Yeah, look, that's certainly part of the process. I mean, we have been approached a number of times by larger entities, including some ASX listed companies. So there is strong interest in what we're doing, but also the region. We believe just getting our mining leases approved is going to significantly increase the amount of activity in that regard, and significantly increase the value of our company, I guess, and our project. So it's likely that there will be joint venture merger type opportunities with or without IPO, but we are very interested in exploring that IPO concept, whether it's just ASX or dual listing, including potentially listing in Canada or similar. And we're building a team around having the expertise in house to be able to take the company and project to that stage.
Perfect. Now, is there anything else that you think investors should be aware or should be excited about in terms of this project?
Look, the gold price has had a little bit of a break in terms of the significant run it was seeing last year. So it's consolidating now. The geopolitical situation hasn't really changed significantly. So, all of the analysts that we've been looking at are still predicting gold to be significantly more valuable in the future. That only adds significant value to the project, to our company, like other gold exploration and mining companies. But we're not going to get too distracted by that. But as that gold price does appreciate in the future, then we're only going to get better opportunities in terms of what we can deliver to our shareholders, whether it's a merger, acquisition, IPO, etc. So we'll make sure whatever we do is going to be best in the best interests of the business and the shareholders, but also that we try and manage the timing so that we take advantage of the best opportunities available.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, great. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. This has been very, interesting, and I believe that investors want to, capitalize on this opportunity because there is potentially a huge upside in this, given that gold is always in high demand. So anybody who's watching this episode who wants to find out more, please reach out to my team and we can connect you directly through to Andrew to discuss this opportunity. But thank you very much for jumping on. It's been great to chat.
No, thanks, Daniel. Nice to chat with you. So I look forward to, to working with you going forward.
Perfect.
Cheers.
Thank you.